Good day, students. In this class, we would be learning how to implement the stack concept in Python. And for that, I would be utilizing list data type. Now, clearly you can see on the screen that I have placed in FILO, otherwise also called as LIFO. FILO stands for first in, last out, and LIFO stands for last in, first out. Now this is a representation of a stack that you see on the screen. Now I want to give you a real-time application, and I will implement the same real-time example onto the Python code. Now you have very well heard of online examinations. And when I say online examinations, it is not examination that you do sitting in your home, but examinations which you do going to a center. Now, whenever you go to a center, there will be a class room, and in the classroom you will have a lot of systems. Plenty of systems will be there, and you would be asked or assigned to choose the system. In fact, either you can choose a system or you'll be assigned the system. So this is a small classroom setup where I am drawing systems, right? So you got a set of systems that you see here, and students will be actually utilizing these systems for performing an online examination. Now usually after the exam is completed, the supervisor, right, he will I'm drawing the supervisor there, so he will come to inspect your system after you have left, not while you are there. This person will come to check your system. Now they will not only, of course, your scores would be recorded. Along with that, they would also check your system to find out if you have gone and visited websites and extracted solutions, which you are not supposed to do that, right? So there would be an application in each of the system that would actually work as a data collecting object. So this application would be installed on each of these systems, and they would actually record the websites. Now in all of the examinations, in most of the examinations, you are permitted to actually do some reference, but there are only certain number of websites that you are allowed to visit. In other words, you cannot visit those so-called websites that your examination center or the examination board has barred. When I say barred, you are not permitted to get your suggestions or your solutions from these websites, because these websites, they provide you the solution, so they don't want you to visit these sites. Now, having mentioned this particular person, this particular guy who is coming to inspect your system, he will not be checking in all of the websites that you have gone through, right? Usual way, what they do is they will come and get the information of the last visited site. Now the general rule of thumb is, if a person's last visited site is showing that he or she is clean, then they will move on to check the next system. So because they can't be utilizing their entire day or their entire week in checking these systems, because it's not going to be an easy affair. So what is the mechanism that these applications which I've just mentioned to you would be utilizing to get your last visited? That technique or that concept that these algorithms that are running these so-called application would be using is what is called as this concept, FILO, first in, last out, last in, first out. So when I talk about last in, first out, I'm saying last visited website, the site that the person has visited last, that would be the first site that will be actually displayed and given to the examiner. So the examiner would know whether the person has cheated or not. Well, Of course, there are other ways, but I'm just giving you an illustration. So, how are we going to implement this concept using Python? Now, as I mentioned to you, the student walks in. Let us assume that the student is walking in to take the examination. The person is coming in to take the examination. So, I'm just drawing a small representation of a student. Now, when the student comes into the examination hall, the general rule of action on the part of the student is to go and make the references that the examination board has allowed. So the very first site that he will type in or she will type in would be the permitted site that the examination has allowed to carry on the reference. So he or she will be utilizing the first few minutes in going through this website. So that would be the first one. So that first one would be pushed all the way down to the stack. Why? Because the student would also go to the next website to check for the information. So the next website, say for example, this is the website that the student is checking. So this would be the next website in line. And subsequently the student is checking this site. This is the next one, Parsing.com. So that would be the site checked and that would be pushed in. And next, the student wants to check the next site. Say for example, the student wants to check this site, say ccc.com, and the check is fine. So it is being pushed on. Now, what if the student suddenly thinks that he or she has to do some references or some YouTube reference, permitted reference from the YouTube. So what does the student does? The student goes and checks a video, okay, video 1 from YouTube, which is talking about Python. Fine, fair enough. So this is permitted. So this goes down. And next is video 2. The student is going and checking for the next video 2 on Python, and this time he uses Python.com, right? He checks a video on Python using this site. So that's fair enough. So again, this site is pushed back. This has to be pushed back. So I need to push this, right? Now, subsequently, again, the student is visiting another site. So let us say that he or she is viewing the third video and then subsequently the fourth video. Now, suddenly there is, what should I say, an air of temptation or for the student. Now, it may not happen if in case the student wants to do something out of the way, something that is not needed, and in this case the student goes and checks at this particular site, say for example, say geomath.com. The site has got all the solutions and the student is checking this site, which is not supposed to happen. So the session gets, or I should say the time for the examination gets finished, and the papers are or I should say the question or the completed work is submitted and the student is ready to go. The students all leave. Now, the point is that, as I mentioned to you, the examiner wants to get this particular information. So that is one particular aspect. And not only that, there can also be another requirement from the examination board. Imagine the examination board is very serious. In that case, what they would do is they would pick up a few systems and they would ask the examiner, they would ask this particular guy whom you see here to collect the list of sites that the students have visited and enter them into the database. So in that fashion, the examination board will know what are the sites, majority of the sites the students have visited, and what are the sites they are not supposed to have gone through. So there are a lot of things that we can handle here. So if you were to see here, the first thing is that I just mentioned to you, I want, or the examiner wants, the last site. So in that case, we will have to pop the last site out, right, using the pop method. Now, as I mentioned to you, the examination board wants to collect all the sites. So in that case, the data need to be entered, need to be collected, right? So that is also there. So, and the next one is, you have to know, or you have to see what exactly the list of sites. So for that, the data have to be viewed, right? So this is there. So three important functions are there. So you can remove the last visited site, you can view the information present or enter all the data that is being seen by the student, and you can also see what is actually present in the stack. So these are the three main operations that we will see how to do it. And also there are situations where the student wouldn't view any of these sites, right? In that case, the stack would be empty. So we should also cater to a situation like that. So all of these activities we are going to perform using OOPS concept in Python. Of course, this is a little bit, I should say, a little bit high-end stuff. So I will do two examples, one using OOPS concept, the other using just plain Python codes. Now, as I mentioned to you, this particular last in, first out, this particular information which I've just shown you is utilized in even when you actually want to check your previous visited site on the browser. Suppose you have a browser, you want to know the previous visited site, which site you have visited, and you can literally use this back button. I hope you can see this. This is the back button. The moment you click on this, an algorithm sets, or I should say an algorithm is fired, and that algorithm is basically based on last in, first out. It gives you the last visited site, right? So that is an application there. And even when you are writing code, there is a term what is called as, let me write that down. It's called as syntax parsing, right? Syntax parsing. Now this, what exactly is the meaning of this? For example, you're writing a function, right? You're writing a JavaScript function, and you fail to put the last parenthesis, right? Imagine this is a certain language and you fail to place in this parenthesis, and immediately the compiler will jump and tell you, look man, you have not placed in the parenthesis. And how do they do that? They do that using this technique. What is that? Last in, first out. Finally, you're not done this. This is the last step that you have carried out. So you rectify this first, and that's why we say last in, first out. And even in text editor, says for example, I have just placed in this, right? I don't want this to be there. What I need to do, I say Control Z, right? You see that the last entered characters will be vanished. So this is just to give you the practical illustration of the stack, how exactly the stack is used. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to implement this particular concept as a project. So let's do that. Let me go to the PyCharm, and what I'm going to do is we will be creating an application which has the ability to store sites, remove sites, and view sites from database. Okay, that's exactly what we are going to do. And what are the concept we are going to use? We will use the concept of last in, first out, that's stack. Okay, this is stack programming. Okay, you can probably, that's fine. So having mentioned that, let me just create a class here. So I'm going to say class sites record, and this is def method, and I'm going to create an empty list. So self dot stack, an empty list is created. Now you can either use self dot stack or you can say stack of websites, whatever you want, it doesn't matter, but I just placed that as stack there. So that's the first one. Now after this, what I want to do is I would like to implement the following methods. What are the methods I would like to implement? I want to basically push the data, push, and then self comma sites, right, whatever sites the person is visiting. So in this case it's going to be self dot, in stack I'm going to push it, append, and the sites that the person wants. Now how does this work? Now, let me just show you step by step, right? So over here I'm going to create an object. So I'm going to say student hyphen 1 is equal to sites record. So I'm creating here. Now what I'm going to do is, after I've created, I want to collect the data, right, for this person. So for that, what I have to do is I will have to set up a menu. So in this case I'm going to say menu options is equal to input 3 code, say the first one, enter 1 if you want to save the sites, right? So that's it. I'm just going to show you how exactly the first one works. Of course we need to have a list of options. Okay, anyway I will just enter the list of options. Enter 2 if you want to remove the last seen site or last entered site, right? And next enter 3 if you want to view the database, and 4 enter 4 if you want to exit. So these are the options. Now let me, okay, I've created this. Now what I have to do is I will have to go and call in the objects, or I should say call in the methods, right? So if the person has entered 1, so there's a slight check, okay, if the person has entered 1, so that will be captured, but to test it we need to do typecasting. So int, and then you see that there is this is nothing but last in first out, right? So I have failed to place that parenthesis. Immediately there will be indication by the cursor. Okay, so I have created the menu, I have created the object. Now using this object, what we got to do, we have to actually get the information. So if the person has entered 1, right, if menu option is equal to 1, then I'm going to say sites visit is equal to input, please enter the site name. So this one would be prompted. Now when you enter the site name, what I need to do is I have to actually record this information. So how do I record this data? Because this information has to be sent in. Now we have created this particular object here. You take in this object. So student student underscore 1, right, dot. Now we have a method called push, so I'm going to use push there. And what you want to push, you want to push the site visits, so the data is pushed here. Now after you have pushed it, suppose you want to see it, right? So there is an option for seeing it. And how do you get that option? So you need to go here. If option is equal to, I'm going to use this option for 3 there. So I'm going to create that function def to view, right? So if you want to view it, just you go here and you say print self dot stack, right? So this one will actually print all the information if you want to view it. So that's fine. Now the question is, what if the person wants to delete the last site? So for that we need to go over here and then we say def pop items, so pop self. So we need to have a check. If you can put a parenthesis here, if the length of self dot stack, if the length of self dot stack is less than 1, that means there aren't any items there, then you need to show that print nothing to show, or you just say, maybe you can use the word print the database is empty. If not, okay, just you return self dot stack. You perform this operation dot pop, so the item would be removed, right? Now this is the method that would come in very much handy. Now we are going to give an illustration where this if loop will not be true here. So if the stack is less than, then no. If in case the stack is greater than 1, then we will actually pop, and that would be a better one to first understand. Okay, so we need to create the next option. The option is I'm just going to go for the next option with else if. Okay, elif menu option is equal to 2 is equal to 2, then what happens? If you have to remove this, so what we do is we call this, right? Instead of saying, we just use this object and then we call this function. Okay, so that is actually called. Now again we have to use elif. So I'll copy this. Elif option is equal to 3, then you print this view.self. So I'm going to call this as view. Okay, so first option 1, 2, 3, and the next one is else if, no, I'll just give elif this thing is equal to 4. Now we need to break it, right? If this is equal to 4, we need to give a break. Now how do we break it? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to utilize a while loop. Okay, so I'm going to place while true, all of these options would be taking into effect. While all of these options are true, over here I'll put a break. It's not a break point, it's just a break. else break, and here else print. Please enter a valid option. Okay, so that's fine. So now we are getting a highlight here. So menu, that's because of indentation. We should have an indentation like that. Okay, so all the if loop will be inside the while loop. Okay. Okay, that's nice. So now the question comes, everything looks neat. So the object is created. Now let me just find out why it is okay, an object is created. Okay, in this case I want to make sure everything is online, everything is perfect. Okay, so in this case too many, it will say too many parentheses. If you want, you can place a parenthesis. If you don't want, you don't have to place the parenthesis. Okay, so let's execute this and check this out. So I'm going to run it. So when I say run it, I will have to enter. Okay, enter 1, enter 2. Probably what I should have done is I could have given a delimiter or an asterisk like that, so that it will be much better. Okay, so it's over here. Enter 1 to save the site. So 1. So please enter the site name. So site name the student has entered is say maths.org. Please, what do you want? Do you want to save or do you want to see? Or I want to enter one more site. I say 1. Please enter the site name. I will say Parsing.com, and again is asking I want to enter one more site. Say the third site. Imagine the third site is tell me more.com. Okay, this site. So now to view the information 3. Okay, you can clearly see all the data, whatever data the student has seen has come. You see that? This is the first site, the second site, the third site. Now if you want to remove the last site, say you want to remove this last site, so for that what you need to do is you need to press you need to go over here and enter 2. So if I press 2, this last site will be removed. And what do you want to do? I want to see if the last site is removed. 3. You see that? It's lovely. And you want to exit. What you want to do? If you want to exit, you say press 4 and process is finished. You see that? This is a lovely program. Students, I hope you enjoyed this beautiful section. This is a mini project where we have implemented the concept of OOPS and the concept of last in first out stack programming. Thank you everybody. Enjoy your evening.